My name's Mike Ellis. I have a problem. I rescue, refurbish, restore and revitalise vintage drums, in particular Premier drums. In this programme I'll share with you my adventures, ups and downs, ins and outs, triumphs and tragedies as I lavish some TLC on vintage British drums. Welcome to the Drum Fettler. Hello fettling fans, just giving the Vistalite bass drum a bit more of a polish. Well, you know how it is, you clean up one bit and it's lovely and shiny, then you go, oh, that next bit needs doing, and then so on and so forth. Spend a lot of time on one and then realise the mark is on the other side, but there you go. Now then, what have we got for you in this exciting edition of the Drum Fettler? Well, we have a new arrival, and the new arrival is a sibling for this very drum. How well do you know your vintage British drums, eh? Think you're a bit of an expert or just a well-informed hobbyist? Either way, we've got a little bit of a quiz for you later. And Lokfast. Now, often people think Lokfast refers to that range of very elegant stands that have the oval base. Well, did you know it also refers to a collection of tom holders, 3 to be precise, that were introduced in the late 60s. More on that later. And on that subject, today's major project is a Lokfast tom holder Cymbal hybrid. Now, I had an interesting hardware request from a client who has a early 70s Premier kit, which I think started life as a B202. Now, many people think it's a B303 because of the 2 tom holder mounts. However, and this is a very important point that confuses people, this is the 389 tom holder socket. Now, when a drum kit was destined to have 1 tom, Premier would mount this on the reso side of the bass drum, nearest the drummer. However, if a drum kit was destined to have 2 toms on it, they would then go and be mounted on the batter side. Now this presumably was so the toms could be swung in, because if you have 2 on the reso side, you've got a gap about that much. I think that's quite a common mistake, because I've seen a lot of kits like that. This is not a problem in that respect for him, because he doesn't want to mount another tom out of it, he wants to mount a cymbal arm for the ride. Now this reminded me, some years ago I had a lovely blue shimmer bass drum and a lovely blue shimmer floor tom and an equally lovely blue shimmer 14x8 rack tom. The only problem was, on the bass drum was this mount, and I had one of these, but on the rack tom was one of these, the 39235. You know, it's 392 L on. How do we bring the two together without drilling holes relatively easily? The joy of Premier hardware, pretty much from the 50s up until the Yamaha merger, is it's nearly all interchangeable. It's like a big construction set. You can take bits from here and there and they will fit together eventually. There's pretty much parts available to make it happen. What I did was, this is the dagger mount. I'm sure we're all familiar with these. This is quite a substantial piece of kit here. Quite a useful weapon, that, isn't it? I've got to get a method of being able to put a cymbal on through here. Now, the most obvious way is to use one of these, a 39231 adjuster cast. These are on single tom holders, double tom holders, quad tom holders, triple tom holders. They're also on boom arms, Lokfast boom arms. First of all, I needed to check, because that's one of the fixtures that it castings that it goes into, and as you can see the teeth lock there. So I checked to see if they would lock, and they have the same tooth pattern, so yes, they will fit. But because it's got that raised disc in the middle on the underside, the teeth won't lock. So the only way I could do it at the time was to drill out the cross that's cast into the inside. It's not an ideal situation to start butchering these parts, but nil desperandum, needs must. That's how I did it. Fitted that to that there, the arm went in there, and it worked beautifully. I was thinking of doing the same this time, however, I remembered that a discovery after I'd done that tom on was the rather wonderful 6314T-31. Now, it looks very much like the adjuster cast. Similar, very similar, except for it has this tube cast into it down at the bottom, and at the end of that tube are teeth, and rather wonderfully these teeth will lock into these of the 389. So the job becomes a lot easier, because all I need to do now is make the hole in that a little bigger, and that's to accommodate the eye bolt. Now this, as you can see, is the eye bolt with a smaller hole, because I'm going to be using a cymbal arm from the Lokfast stem, the top stem, which you see, it's about 9.5mm. So that will go through there. The eye bolt goes in there, through there, cymbal arm through there, ride cymbal on the end, and we're ready to rock and roll. Whilst we're on the subject, we'll have a quick look at these tom holders, because in 1968 Premier updated their tom holders, and rather confusingly they called them Lokfast. And when I say confusing, it's confusing now because most people think Lokfast is the set of stands. So there were 3 other tom holders in the Lokfast range. There was the 388 shell to shell. Now the 388 basically was a follow-on from the original 388. The original 388 became the Olympic 1388, as was Premier's practice. Every time they invented a new piece of hardware, the old one was relegated to the Olympic range and got a 1 on the front of the part number in brackets. This is the 38850 spigot, now very similar to the one that preceded it. This part here is the 388 arm, so that would, fit on here, and you could either have another one of these to go to another one of these on the tom, so that will be called a shell to shell mount. But they also did a single disappearing, which was the 388 here with the spigot on the tom, the dagger which went to this mount on the bass drum, and then they also did the double disappearing, which was 2 of these, one here, one there, one of those on the tom-tom and one on the bass drum. Never actually saw one marketed where the dagger went into the tom and you had a shell mount. These were still available into the early 80s, but were not spec'd on the kits. They were not featured in the catalogues. What I need to do now is I need to very carefully drill that out and see if I can assemble it and make it work.
If you're wondering about the Heyman tilter that we did in the last edition, it's got to its new home in the Netherlands, and the owner is very happy with it. It fits and it works perfectly. Another little small victory for the Drum Fettler. Now, let's get back to that 389 tom holder cymbal arm hybrid.
Right, that's the hole drilled. Let's get rid of the swap and the little bits of shavings out of there so they don't mess anything up. Now, let's just check the eye bolt fits, which it does. I'm going to try with the adjuster cast. Yep, nice teeth lock. The eye bolt is long enough. Great. Okay. Now, what I need to do now is get a hand bolt on there. The first thing to do is clean away the villain's mess and get a 5/16 BSF hex nut. Now I'm just going to check that it is the right one and the threads are okay on both the hex nut and the eye bolt. Yes, they are, so that's okay. We don't need these anymore. So pop that in its little hidey hole in the hand nuts. Eye bolt back in the casting, back through the new hole, and on with the hand nut, and as if by magic it all fits together. Right, snagging on the slot-headed lock bolt. Bugger, that's not going to work. Let's have a think about this. I think I've got a solution. I've got this old Olympic, I think it's Olympic. Yes, it's Olympic, it's not the latest club one. Hi-hat stand. And these wing nuts I have used before in an emergency to replace the Premier hand nuts with the not so captured hex nut. So with any luck, if I can get this off, it will fit, well it should fit, onto the eye bolt thread, so we could have the problem solved. So let's try, yes, perfect fit, excellent. Great, well I'm glad that works. I can put these away. Just need to, excuse me, would you know, a moment, I just need to get to the washers. There we go, okay, sorry about that, I didn't pay too much. A suitable washer. A voiler, the job is done. Well, will you look at this? It's a parcel, delivered by Parcel Force to the address, to the door, and not to the bin store a mile away, eh, Hermes? Yes, looking at you. Get it sorted. I've been asked if I sleep naked. Well, yes, I do, but only on long-haul flights. I've been asked what I think about modern drums, because obviously I prefer the old ones, vintage drums. And modern drums are great. Very well made, excellent products, can't fault them there. But unfortunately, I think like the automotive industry, it's all become a little homogenised. Everything's the same because there's only a few factories left actually making the components. And I know they've all got their own individual special little USPs and all that, but back in the olden days, which were not necessarily better, as I have discussed previously, everybody made everything in-house. Everything, the rods, the hoops, the shells, everything was made in-house. But now it seems to be they are like modern car manufacturers. They're just assemblers. We seem to have got to the same state of affairs with drums. One of the fun things was, years ago, when you were watching the telly, Top of the Pops and Lift Off and Get It Together, and one of the fun things to do when you were a budding drummer was the nerdy pastime of identifying kits just by looking at them. And this carried on until quite recently, actually, certainly in the UK, because the BBC recycled a lot of their old Top of the Pop shows, obviously not with the DJs, because some of them have been very naughty, and we don't talk about them anymore like I am now. I know there's a lot of you out there who did the same as me, and you annoyed people by shouting out the names of the manufacturers of the kits that were on the telly. Let's just see how good you are. Coming up are 10 shots of 10 British vintage kits. Let's see how good you are. See if you can spot them all, identify them all. No cheating. Put your answers down there, down here in the message section. It's not going to be as easy as you may think. How did you do? How do you think you do?
Okay, there's been a slight change of plan with the 389 tom holder cymbal hybrid arm. The client loves it, but he wants the big shiny wing nuts on it. Now, as you'll recall, it was snagging on the slot bolt, so how are we going to get around that? Well, I shall show you.
The way we're going to get round that is with these grub screws. I'm going to put a grub screw in the place of the slot bolt. This means that obviously you will need an Allen key, so we need to find one that will fit. So I need to get all my bits and bobs out again, get the grub screw fitted, put the big wing bolt on, the one with the not so captured hex nut. You remember those? And put it all together and see if he likes it. I'm sure he will.
Okay, I think we're done. We've got the nice big shiny hand nut on there, that's great. Got the adjuster cast for the arm to go in, and the little grub screw just there for any fine rotation adjustment that may or may not be needed. Premier stuff, 50s, 60s, 70s and into the 80s. It's all interchangeable if you've got the right bits and you've got a bit of an imagination, or me.
If you find yourself in need of Premier parts, and let's face it, who doesn't, pop along to the website. Even if you can't see what you need, drop me a line through the contact form. Also goes for Beverley drums, hammer drums and of course Olympic. Well, I suppose I should get this open and see what loveliness, what temptations lie inside for me to settle. Another blue Vistalite. This is obviously going to go with the bass drum. Whether or not it's going to be a single-headed or a double-headed like the bass drum remains to be seen, because I'm still awaiting instructions. I shall wait until my sealed orders are delivered by bike courier. Can't stop, I've got to go out on the road. There are drum parts and bits and bobs and things to be saved. Go for a drive in the country, they said. It'll be nice, they said.
Hands up for discovering a new...
The Mercy mission was a success. Managed to rescue quite a few bits and bobs that were destined for the skip. Never throw anything away. It's always going to be of some use to somebody. I've got quite a few hoops, some snowdrum shells that have seen better days, but a couple of cases there would be great for storing shells in. It's rather nice big red sparkle shell.
How did you do? Did you get them all right? Oh, you're so clever, aren't you? Oh, I tell you, this has really got me in the mood for a bit of a fondue, hey? And a nice steaming hot pint of cherry bee. Happy days, happy days. Oh, where's me brine nylon shirt, love? Join us again on the next edition of the Drum Fettler.